A poor girl works as a maid in a billionaire CEO's mansion. Unexpectedly, his son stops her and calls. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Harrington estate, painting soft gold across polished marble floors. Lily Bennet's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the feather duster, careful not to leave a single mark on the glass display case that probably cost more than everything she owned combined. She had been working here for 2 weeks, keeping her head down, never speaking unless spoken to. The other maid said the master of the house, Ethan Harrington, was rarely home. That was fine with her. She preferred silence to judgment. Her uniform was one size too large, the fabric stiff against her skin. She had stitched it herself the night before starting, using an old sewing kit her mother left behind. The scent of cleaning polish filled the air, mixed with the faint aroma of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Lily's paycheck would barely cover the rent of her small studio apartment and her younger brother's medicine, but at least it was honest work. She wiped the last corner of the cabinet and exhaled, unaware that a small pair of eyes was watching her from the grand staircase. A little boy, no older than 5, peeked around the banister, his messy blonde hair glowing in the morning light. He had the kind of innocence that disarmed anyone who looked at him. When Lily turned, startled by a soft giggle, the feather duster slipped from her hand. The boy froze for a moment and then ran toward her. "Mommy!" he shouted, his small arms wrapping around her legs before she could react. The world seemed to stop. Lily's heart pounded so hard she could hear it echo in her ears. "Sweetheart, you must be mistaken," she whispered, kneeling down to meet his wide blue eyes. "I am not your mother," but the boy shook his head with conviction, his tiny hand gripping the edge of her apron. "You smell like her," he said quietly, "and you have the same eyes." Lily's throat tightened. Before she could respond, a woman in a crisp uniform rushed into the hallway. "Adam!" the nanny exclaimed, her face pale. "You must not do that again. Come here now." The boy hesitated, his eyes darting between Lily and the nanny. "I am sorry," Lily murmured, stepping back as if distance could erase the strange connection that had sparked between them. The nanny took the child's hand and led him away, whispering apologies under her breath. Lily stood frozen, her mind spinning. She turned back to the glass case, but her reflection in the polished surface startled her. For a fleeting moment, she could have sworn she saw another face looking back, older, softer, and heartbreakingly familiar. The sound of footsteps echoed from the upper floor, firm and deliberate. Someone powerful was home. Lily quickly lowered her gaze, unaware that her life was about to collide with the man behind those footsteps, and that a single mistaken word from a child would unravel a truth buried for years. The echo of those heavy footsteps faded into silence, leaving Lily standing motionless beside the grand staircase. Her pulse had not yet settled from the strange encounter with the boy. She picked up her duster and tried to focus on her work, but the child's voice kept repeating in her mind. "You smell like her. You have the same eyes." That night, when the mansion grew quiet and the other maids gathered in the kitchen for supper, Lily sat alone in the laundry room, her hands soaked in warm, soapy water. The memory of the boy's arms around her lingered like a ghost. She wondered what kind of life he lived inside walls like these, surrounded by gold and marble, yet missing something so simple as a mother's warmth. She had heard whispers from the staff that the CEO's wife had passed away years ago, soon after the boy was born. Maybe that explained the sadness in his eyes. The next morning, Lily woke before dawn. The air was cool and still, and a faint mist hung over the gardens outside the servants' quarters. She tied her hair neatly and went to polish the silverware in the dining hall. As she worked, her reflection shimmered on the polished surface of a platter, and for a fleeting moment, she thought again of that strange familiarity she had felt when the boy looked at her. She shook her head. It was impossible. She had never met the Harrington family before taking this job. Still, something about the child's gaze had stirred a memory she could not name. Just as the sun began to rise higher, the nanny entered, holding Adam's small hand. He wore a white shirt and suspenders, his hair neatly combed. When he spotted Lily, he smiled instantly, the kind of pure smile that had no agenda, only affection. The nanny frowned but allowed him a brief wave before leading him toward the breakfast table. Ethan Harrington appeared a few minutes later. He was tall, composed, and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit even inside his own home. His presence seemed to command the room without effort. The maids lowered their eyes as he passed. Lily did the same, but curiosity pulled her gaze upward for a second, just enough to catch a glimpse of his face. There was strength there, yes, but also something distant, like a man who had forgotten how to rest. His voice was deep but calm as he spoke to his son, asking simple questions about breakfast and lessons. When the child replied cheerfully, Lily noticed how the man's features softened, almost imperceptibly. The sight unsettled her more than she expected. After breakfast, the nanny escorted Adam upstairs while Ethan took a call in the hallway. Lily approached to clear the table, careful not to make a sound, yet the faint clink of silver drew his attention. He looked at her for the first time. His grey eyes were sharp, analytical, but there was a flicker of recognition that neither of them understood. "You are new here," he said, his tone polite but distant. "Yes, sir," Lily replied softly, her voice steady despite the tension in her chest. "I started 2 weeks ago." He nodded once. "You keep the place spotless. The staff speaks well of you." She murmured a quiet thank you, lowering her gaze again. For a long second he studied her, as if trying to place where he might have seen her before. Then his phone rang, breaking the spell. He excused himself and walked away, leaving behind a faint scent of cologne and unanswered questions. Later that day, while dusting the library, Lily found a small wooden box tucked behind a row of books. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman holding a baby. The woman's eyes, soft brown and full of warmth, were almost identical to hers. Lily's breath caught. She traced the edge of the picture with trembling fingers, her heart pounding as the truth she could not yet understand began to whisper through the cracks of her memory. Just then, she heard footsteps again and quickly slid the box back into place. The door opened, and Adam peeked inside. "Are you hiding, Miss Lily?" he asked innocently. She smiled faintly and shook her head. "Just cleaning, sweetheart." He giggled and ran to her side, holding up a toy airplane. "Daddy says I can fly one someday." She crouched to his level and replied, "I am sure you will. You are brave enough already." Adam grinned, then looked thoughtful. "Mommy used to say that too." The words pierced through her like a knife wrapped in silk. Somewhere deep inside, something old and buried stirred awake, and she knew this was not the last time the boy's memory would collide with her own. Outside, the wind brushed against the tall windows, carrying the faint hum of fate moving closer. That evening, the rain began to fall over the Harrington estate, soft at first, then steadier, drumming against the tall windows like a slow heartbeat. Lily moved quietly through the dim hallways, placing fresh linens in the guest rooms and turning down the lights as instructed. The mansion always felt too large at night, its corridors echoing with distant sounds that were not quite silence. She tried not to think about the photograph she had found in the library, but every time she closed her eyes, the woman's face appeared again, the same shape of eyes, the same smile. She told herself it was coincidence, nothing more. As she entered the playroom to tidy up, she noticed a small blanket draped across the couch. Adam was asleep there, his toy airplane resting beside him. The nanny must have gone to fetch something, leaving him for a moment. Lily knelt down and gently adjusted the blanket over his shoulders. His breathing was calm and steady. She watched him for a long second, something protective rising inside her chest, something that frightened her with its intensity. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, and he stirred slightly, murmuring a word that made her heart ache. "Mommy." She froze. The sound was soft, dreamlike, but it carried a weight that made the air heavy around her. She whispered, "Rest, little one," though her voice trembled. Behind her a quiet voice spoke. "He talks in his sleep sometimes." Lily turned sharply. Ethan Harrington stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. The dim light from the hallway cast his face in shadow, but his eyes were fixed on her. "I was just making sure he was warm," Lily said quickly, standing up. "Of course," Ethan replied, stepping into the room. "You seem good with him. Not everyone knows how to calm him down." His tone was softer than she expected. She nodded politely. "Children need patience more than discipline." He tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "Do you have children, Miss Bennet?" The question hit harder than it should have. She hesitated, her throat suddenly dry. "No, sir," she said finally. "Just a younger brother I look after." Ethan studied her for a moment longer, then looked at his sleeping son. The hard edges of his posture softened slightly. He lost his mother when he was very young. Some days are harder than others. Lily felt her heart twist at the quiet sorrow in his voice. "I am sorry," she whispered. "She must have been wonderful." He gave a faint, almost distant smile. She was. Her name was Grace. The name stirred something faint in Lily's memory, a whisper at the edge of thought that she could not catch. She nodded respectfully and stepped back, giving him space. Ethan crouched beside the couch, his large hand brushing his son's hair with a tenderness that contradicted every rumor about his cold nature. "You should get some rest," he said without looking up. "Tomorrow will be busy." Lily nodded again and left the room quietly, but her mind would not quiet itself. Grace. The name echoed in her head all through the night. When dawn came, the storm had cleared, leaving the gardens shining under the early sunlight. Lily moved through the kitchen, preparing breakfast trays, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She remembered fragments of her childhood, moving from foster home to foster home after her mother's death, never knowing who her father was. There had been a photograph once, but she had lost it years ago. A woman named Grace had once visited the orphanage when Lily was little, donating toys and clothes. Could it have been her? The idea seemed too far-fetched, and yet the resemblance, the familiarity of this house, the way the boy had reached for her, it all felt connected by invisible threads. Later that morning, she was called to dust the grand staircase. As she climbed, she saw a silver locket lying on one of the steps. When she opened it, her breath caught again. Inside was a tiny photograph of a baby and a woman, Grace. Unmistakably and etched on the other side were the initials G.B. Lily stared, her fingers trembling. The initials were the same as the ones engraved on the small pendant she had worn since childhood, the only thing that had survived her mother's passing. A chill went through her body. She closed the locket carefully and slipped it back where she had found it, her mind spinning. Downstairs, Ethan's voice echoed from the hallway, calm but commanding as he spoke with his assistant. Lily took a slow breath and steadied herself. She did not know what fate was weaving around her, but she could feel the threads tightening. The past was stirring, and the truth, whatever it was beginning to move toward the surface, one coincidence at a time. The following morning, a cool breeze swept through the Harrington estate, carrying the scent of wet earth from the storm the night before. Lily moved through the marble hallway with her cleaning cart, trying to quiet the storm inside her own thoughts. The locket she had found still haunted her. Its identical initials to her pendant were not something she could explain away. Every rational part of her mind told her to forget it, to focus on her work, but curiosity was louder than reason. As she dusted the grand piano in the living room, her eyes caught the faint engraving on its corner. For Grace, with love. Her chest tightened. The name again. She looked at the family photos placed on a nearby console. Most were of Ethan with Adam, but one photograph stood out. It was older, slightly faded, showing a younger Ethan with a woman who must have been Grace. She looked kind and radiant, her arm looped gently through his. Lily leaned closer, and the realization hit her like a wave. The woman's face was nearly identical to the one in the old photograph she had once lost as a child. The world around her seemed to blur. Could it be that Grace had known her mother? Or worse, could it be that Grace was her mother? The sound of small footsteps behind her snapped her back to the present. Adam was standing by the doorway, holding a toy car. "Miss Lily," he said softly, "you are not supposed to be in here without permission." His voice carried no malice, only the innocence of a child repeating what he had been told. Lily smiled faintly. "You are right, young man. I was just finishing up." Adam walked closer, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Do you like music?" he asked, pointing to the piano. "Mommy used to play that for me every night." He pressed a single key, and the soft note filled the empty room. Lily swallowed hard, her eyes misting. "It is a beautiful sound," she whispered. "Did she teach you any songs?" The boy shook his head. "Daddy says I was too little to remember." He paused, tilting his head. "But sometimes when I dream, I hear her voice. It sounds like you." The words were simple, but they hit Lily deep in her chest. She crouched beside him, unsure how to respond, when a sharp voice cut through the room. "Adam." Ethan stood at the doorway, his expression stern. The boy stiffened, looking guilty. "I told you to stay upstairs with Mrs. Porter," Ethan said, his tone firm but not cruel. "Go on now." Adam obeyed immediately, glancing at Lily one last time before leaving. Ethan's gaze shifted to her. "I would appreciate it if you stayed out of the main rooms when unsupervised," he said evenly. "These spaces hold memories my son is not ready to revisit." Lily nodded quickly, guilt rising in her throat. "I am sorry, sir. It will not happen again." He studied her face for a moment longer, and for the briefest second, his expression softened. "It is not a reprimand," he said more quietly. "It is a request." With that, he turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Lily stood there, her hands trembling. The air felt heavy with things unspoken. Later that afternoon, while polishing the staircase railing, the head housekeeper approached her, lowering her voice. "You should be careful," she warned. "The master does not like anyone asking about the past. The late Mrs. Harrington's memory is delicate." Lily nodded, but her curiosity only deepened. That night, unable to sleep, she sat on her narrow bed, turning the small pendant around her neck over and over between her fingers. The initials GB glinted faintly in the moonlight coming through the small window. Somewhere in this house lay a truth that tied her to it in ways she did not yet understand. As she stared into the darkness, she realized she had two choices: keep pretending she was just a maid, or start finding out who she really was. The decision formed quietly, like a whisper she could no longer ignore. In the morning, she would go back to the library, to that wooden box behind the books. The answers were waiting there, and she was finally brave enough to look for them. The first rays of morning light stretched across the marble floors of the Harrington mansion as Lily entered the library, her heart beating faster than usual. The house was still quiet, the kind of stillness that carried both peace and secrets. She glanced toward the doorway before crouching beside the bookshelf where she had found the wooden box days before. Her fingers brushed against the spines of old volumes until she felt the hidden compartment again. The box was there, just as she remembered. She opened it carefully, revealing the faded photograph and a few folded letters tied together with a ribbon the color of ivory. The ink on the first letter was smudged, but the handwriting was elegant and deliberate. "My dearest Ethan," it began, "if you are reading this, it means the truth I kept must now find its way back to you." Lily's breath caught. She scanned the next few lines and froze when she saw her own name. "I could not tell you about Lily. It was too dangerous then. But she is safe. That is all that matters." The letter slipped from her hands as her mind tried to process what she had just read. Her name, written by Grace Harrington. Every sound in the room faded until all she could hear was the pounding of her heartbeat. She sat back against the shelves, her body trembling. Could it mean that Grace had been her mother, that she was Ethan Harrington's daughter? The thought was too large to hold. Her entire life had been shaped by loss, by unanswered questions, by a past that had never made sense. Now, the puzzle pieces she never knew existed were beginning to fall into place. She quickly tucked the letters back into the box, her hands shaking, when a soft knock startled her. "Miss Bennet?" It was the nanny, Mrs. Porter, standing at the door. "The master wishes to see you in his office." Lily's stomach dropped. She nodded and followed, her mind racing. Ethan stood by the window when she entered his office, sunlight pouring across his desk. He did not look angry, only thoughtful, as if he had been waiting for her. "You seem distracted lately," he said, turning toward her. "Has something happened?" "No, sir," Lily replied quickly, clasping her hands to steady herself. "I am fine." "You work hard," he said, watching her closely, "but there is something about you that feels familiar. I cannot quite explain it." His eyes lingered, not in suspicion, but in quiet searching. She tried to find her voice, but it felt trapped in her chest. "Perhaps it is coincidence," she murmured. He studied her a moment longer, then sighed. "Maybe so." He gestured to the stack of folders on his desk. "We have a charity event this evening. The staff will be needed to help prepare. Adam will also attend briefly. Please make sure he is ready by 6. Lily nodded, grateful for the change in topic. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Miss Bennet," he said quietly, "you remind me of someone I used to know." Her breath caught, but she forced a polite smile and left the room. The rest of the day moved in a blur. The mansion buzzed with activity as florists, caterers, and decorators came and went. Lily worked alongside the other maids, arranging silver trays and lighting candles, but her thoughts were miles away, tangled between disbelief and hope. She knew she needed to confirm what she had read. That evening, as the event began, she stayed near the hallway, Watching the guests arrive in glittering gowns and tuxedos, Ethan greeted them with the calm authority of a man who belonged to power, while Adam sat quietly beside his nanny, playing with his toy car. The boy caught Lily's eye across the room and smiled, waving his small hand. Something warm and painful tugged at her chest. She waved back. A sudden gust from the open terrace door sent a few papers flying from a nearby table. Lily hurried to pick them up before they scattered. As she gathered them, one of the older guests, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, approached her. "You must be new," the woman said, her tone curious. "You look just like Grace did when she was your age." Lily froze. The woman smiled faintly, not noticing her shock. Such a shame she passed so young. Ethan was never the same afterward. Then the woman walked away, leaving Lily standing there, the papers forgotten in her hands. Her entire world tilted in that moment. Too many coincidences, too many signs. Grace Harrington, the woman in every photo, might have been her mother. And if that was true, the man hosting this glittering event might be more than just her employer. He might be her father. The echo of music and laughter drifted through the grand ballroom as the charity event continued into the night. Lily moved silently between the guests, refilling glasses and gathering empty plates, but her thoughts were far from the noise and glitter. Every time she passed one of the portraits on the wall, her heart clenched. The resemblance between her and Grace Harrington was undeniable. The elegant woman in the painting had the same soft brown eyes, the same calm expression that Lily saw in the mirror each morning. She could no longer tell herself it was coincidence. The old woman's words from earlier replayed again and again in her mind. "You look just like Grace did when she was your age." It was both a confirmation and a curse. If it was true, then the man she had been serving tea to, the man whose son she had comforted, was her father. The idea filled her with fear and awe in equal measure. She caught a glimpse of Ethan near the entrance, speaking with donors. His expression was composed, professional, but there was a heaviness behind his eyes that mirrored her own confusion. Adam sat quietly nearby, his small leg swinging from the chair, his toy car gliding across the tablecloth. Lily smiled at him instinctively, and when he looked up, his grin spread wide. "Miss Lily," he called softly, "do you want to see my drawings?" The nanny hesitated, but Ethan gave a small nod of permission. Lily crouched beside the boy as he proudly opened a sketchbook. The pages were filled with crayon drawings, bright suns, stick figures, and little houses. One page stopped her breath. It showed a woman standing beside a piano, holding a baby. Adam pointed at it. "That is Mommy," he said proudly, "and that is me." Lily's eyes blurred. "It is beautiful," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan's voice came from behind them, low and even. "He draws her often. It helps him remember." She turned, startled that he had come closer. "He misses her deeply," Ethan said, his gaze softening as he looked at his son. "Sometimes I think children remember more than we realize." Lily nodded, her voice barely audible. "Memories find ways to stay, even when we forget." Their eyes met for a moment too long, a silent understanding passing between them. Ethan seemed about to speak again when one of his assistants approached, murmuring something about a phone call. He excused himself, and the spell broke. The rest of the evening blurred into small moments, clinking glasses, polite laughter, the soft hum of a string quartet. When the last guest left and the lights dimmed, Lily returned to the library. She could not sleep, not after everything she had discovered. She needed answers. She took the wooden box from the shelf again and unfolded another letter. The handwriting was Grace's, delicate yet steady. "If something ever happens to me," it read, "please find Lily. She will need to know where she came from, even if the truth hurts." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. The truth was no longer hiding, it was waiting for her to face it. As she set the letter down, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Ethan entered the room, surprise flashing across his face when he saw her there. "Miss Bennet," he said quietly. "It is late." She quickly wiped her eyes. "I am sorry, sir. I was just finishing up." He looked at her more closely. "You have been crying." "It is nothing," she said, her voice breaking slightly. He walked to the desk, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes this house has that effect," he said. "It holds more ghosts than people." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he asked softly, "How much do you know about my wife?" Lily hesitated, her pulse racing. "Only what I have heard, that she was kind." He nodded slowly. his eyes distant. Grace was more than kind. She was the heart of this house. After she passed, everything here went quiet. Even the walls stopped listening. His voice was steady, but the sadness beneath it was unmistakable. Lily wanted to tell him the truth, but fear kept her silent. If she was wrong, she could lose everything. If she was right, the truth could change both their lives forever. Ethan turned toward the door. "Good night, Miss Bennet," he said softly. "You should rest." She watched him leave, the sound of his footsteps fading into the dark hall. Then she looked down at the letter one last time. The ink shimmered faintly in the lamplight, and she whispered to herself, "I think I already know." The following morning, the mansion awoke to a quiet hum of activity. The event had left traces of glitter and exhaustion across every room, but the air itself felt heavier than before, as if the house had absorbed the weight of the unspoken truths lingering inside it. Lily moved through the hallway with her dusting cloth and bucket, her thoughts replaying the conversation from the night before. Ethan's sadness, his loneliness, the way his eyes softened when he spoke of Grace, it all struck something deep within her. She could no longer deny what the letters had revealed. She was Grace Harrington's daughter, hidden away for reasons she could not yet understand. But she could not tell Ethan. Not yet. The truth was too fragile, too explosive. She needed to be sure. While she worked in the study later that morning, she noticed a family album half buried beneath some documents on the shelf. It was covered in dust, untouched for years. Her curiosity took over. She opened it carefully, the pages creaking. The first photographs were of Ethan and Grace at their wedding, two young people smiling at the future, unaware of how short it would be. The next few pages showed a baby, but Lily noticed something strange. There were two babies in one of the pictures, both swaddled, both marked with small bracelets on their wrists. One bracelet read AH and the other LB. Her heart began to pound. Two children. Two. She whispered the letters to herself, her eyes stinging. Adam Harrington and Lily Bennet. The truth settled over her like a wave of cold air. She was not just Grace's daughter. She was Ethan's too. She was Adam's sister. The realization made her legs weak. All the coincidences, the strange connection she had felt with the boy, the reason Ethan's face had seemed familiar, it all finally made sense. She closed the album quickly, her hands trembling, and tucked it back where she had found it. A voice startled her from behind. "Miss Bennet." It was Mrs. Porter, the nanny, her sharp eyes studying Lily closely. "The master would like you to take Adam to the garden this afternoon. He needs some fresh air." Lily nodded quickly, trying to steady her breathing. Of course. In the garden, the sunlight filtered gently through the tall oaks. Adam ran ahead with his toy airplane, his laughter echoing like music across the open space. Lily followed slowly, watching him with a mix of affection and heartache. "You are very quiet today," Adam said suddenly, glancing back at her. "Are you sad?" She knelt beside him and smiled softly. "No, sweetheart, just thinking." He tilted his head. "Daddy says when people think too much, it means they have something they want to say." She laughed lightly, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Your daddy is a wise man. He misses Mommy," Adam said simply. "Sometimes I see him looking at her picture, and he looks like he wants to cry, but he never does." Lily's throat tightened. "Maybe he cries where no one can see." The boy looked up at her with wide eyes. "Do you cry where no one can see?" "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice a whisper. "But I am learning to be brave." Adam reached out and took her hand. "Mommy used to say that too." The words broke something open inside her. She pulled him gently into her arms, holding him close, her tears hidden in his hair. "Your mummy was very smart," she said softly, "and very kind." "Like you," Adam said, smiling up at her. The moment was tender and unbearable all at once. She wished she could tell him the truth, that he was not alone, that family had been standing beside him all along. But she could not. Not until she understood why Grace had hidden her. When they returned to the house, Ethan was in the foyer, speaking with a man in a dark suit. He turned as they entered, his eyes immediately finding Lily. "Thank you, Miss Bennet," he said. "Adam looks happier." "He had fun," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "You are good with him," Ethan said quietly. "He trusts you." "That is rare." Their eyes met again, and for a moment it felt as if time folded in on itself, the past and present overlapping. She forced herself to look away, whispering, "I only do what any heart would do." he smiled faintly, unaware that the heart he was speaking to might very well share his own blood. That night, the mansion was cloaked in silence except for the faint ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. Lily sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, her pendant resting in her palm. The initials GB shimmered faintly under the lamplight, the same letters she had seen inside the locket upstairs. There was no longer any room for denial. She was Grace Harrington's daughter. She was Ethan's daughter. The truth was clear now, but what she did not understand was why Grace had sent her away, or how Ethan could have lived all these years believing he had only one child. Somewhere, there had been a lie, a cruel, protective, or desperate lie that had changed both their lives. She thought of Adam's innocent face, his laughter, the way he reached for her hand. He deserved the truth, but so did his father. She could not keep pretending to be a stranger in the house that should have been her home. When dawn came, she rose early and decided to speak to Mrs. Porter. The nanny had worked for the Harrington family for decades and surely knew more than she had ever let on. She found the older woman arranging flowers in the sitting room. "Mrs. Porter," Lily began softly, "may I ask you something personal about Mrs. Harrington?" The woman's hands stilled for a moment before continuing their work. "That depends on what you are asking. Did she have 2 children?" Lily's voice trembled slightly. The nanny froze completely this time, the petals of the lily she was holding slipping from her fingers. Her eyes darted to the door, as if to make sure they were alone. "Where did you hear that?" "I saw a photograph," Lily said quietly. 2 babies, both wearing bracelets, one with the initials AH, the other LB. Mrs. Porter's face went pale. "That photograph should not exist anymore," she whispered. "It was supposed to be destroyed after what happened." Lily stepped closer, her heart pounding. "Please, I need to know. Who am I?" Mrs. Porter sighed heavily, as if releasing a secret she had carried for too long. "Grace gave birth to twins, Adam and Lily. But there were complications. The doctor said one child might not survive. Grace was weak, and the stress nearly broke her. Ethan was out of the country on business, unaware of what was happening. The hospital made an error in the records. When one of the babies was taken to another facility for care, everyone believed she had died." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "But she did not die." Mrs. Porter nodded slowly. "Grace discovered it weeks later. She wanted to tell Ethan, but by then she had fallen very ill. She sent the baby away to protect her, to make sure no one could use her against the family. She wrote letters, but Ethan never saw them. After her death, the truth was buried." Lily could barely breathe. "You knew," she whispered. "All this time you knew." Mrs. Porter's eyes glistened with regret. "I swore to Grace I would never tell unless the time was right. I thought that time would never come. But now I see her face every time I look at you. You deserve to know the truth, but you must be careful. Ethan's heart has been broken once. Learning he has a daughter he lost might shatter him." Lily felt both sorrow and resolve rising within her. "He deserves to know," she said firmly, "and Adam deserves to know he has a sister." Mrs. Porter reached out, taking Lily's hand gently. "Then tell him with compassion, not as a servant, but as his daughter." Lily nodded, her decision made. That evening, when Ethan returned from his meeting, he found Lily waiting in the library. The wooden box sat open on the desk beside her, the letters and the photograph displayed under the soft lamplight. He stopped in the doorway, confusion flickering across his face. "Miss Bennet, what is this?" She turned to face him, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "This is the truth, sir," she said quietly. "About Grace, about the daughter you thought you lost." The room fell silent except for the steady rhythm of both their hearts, the moment between them holding the weight of years and blood and fate finally unraveling. The silence that followed Lily's words was so complete that even the sound of the rain outside seemed to stop. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his gaze fixed on the photograph and the stack of letters spread across the desk. The light from the lamp cast long shadows across the room, blurring the lines between past and present. "What are you saying?" he asked finally, his voice low, uncertain. Lily took a deep breath. "Grace had twins, Adam and me. She wrote these letters to you, but they never reached you. Mrs. Porter told me everything." Ethan's face drained of color. He stepped forward slowly, as if afraid the truth might vanish if he moved too quickly. He picked up the photograph, his hand trembling. "Twins," he whispered, staring at the image of Grace holding 2 babies. His thumb brushed over the faded surface, his eyes wide with disbelief and grief. "No, that cannot be. I buried my wife believing one of our children died at birth." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You did not know because the hospital made a mistake. Grace sent me away to protect me. She wanted me safe." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time he saw what his heart had been trying to tell him for weeks: the shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, the quiet strength in her expression. It was Grace's face reflected in younger form. "My God," he murmured, his voice breaking, "you are her." He took another step closer, his breath unsteady. "You are mine." The moment stretched between them, fragile and powerful. Lily nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I did not want to believe it at first, but when I saw the photo, when I found the letters, everything made sense." Ethan sank into the chair behind him, one hand covering his face. The weight of years pressed down all at once. "Grace tried to tell me," he whispered. "She wrote something before she passed, but I never understood what it meant. She said I would find her again when I least expected it." He looked up at Lily, his eyes shining. "She meant you." Lily's heart ached at the raw emotion in his voice. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you, sir. I just needed to know who I was." Ethan stood and crossed the space between them, his expression both broken and full of awe. "Do not call me sir," he said quietly. "If this is true, you are not my employee. You are my daughter." The words shattered what little restraint she had left. A sob escaped her lips as Ethan reached out, his hand resting hesitantly on her shoulder. For a second, both of them were afraid to move, afraid the fragile truth might break under the weight of their touch. Then, without another word, he pulled her into his arms. The embrace was cautious at first, then desperate, years of loss and longing pouring out in silence. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "All this time, I thought I failed her." Lily clung to him, her tears soaking into his shirt. "You did not fail anyone," she said softly. "She loved you enough to protect me." When they finally pulled apart, Ethan's eyes glistened. "Adam must never hear this from anyone else," he said. "He deserves to know the truth. But from us, together." Lily nodded, her heart full of both fear and relief. "He will understand," she said. "He has your kindness." Ethan smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You have hers," he replied. The clock struck midnight, the chime echoing through the quiet room. Father and daughter stood together for the first time, united by blood, by loss, and by the courage it had taken to uncover the truth. Outside, the rain began again, steady and cleansing, washing the world of its secrets. Ethan placed a gentle hand over the pendant at Lily's neck and whispered, "Welcome home. Let's go." The following morning arrived with the soft glow of sunlight spilling through the tall windows of the Harrington mansion. The air inside the house felt different, lighter somehow, as if the walls themselves sensed that something long buried had finally been unearthed. Lily stood by the window of the library, her heart still heavy but calm. The truth was no longer hiding in shadows. Ethan had not slept much, yet his face carried a quiet peace that had been absent for years. When he entered the room, he paused for a moment, studying her with the tender awe of a father seeing his child for the first time. "You look like her when the morning light touched her hair," he said softly. Grace always stood by that same window. Lily smiled faintly, touched and unsure what to say. "I still do not understand why she had to hide me," she said. Ethan nodded, his gaze distant. "Grace made difficult choices. She was protecting you from something she could not control. There were people who wanted to use our family's name and power for their own gain. If word had spread that one of our children had survived when everyone thought she had not, it could have been dangerous for you." Lily's chest tightened. She must have been so afraid. "She was," Ethan admitted, "but she was also brave. She believed love could find its way back, even through loss." He stepped closer, his voice warm with conviction. And she was right. The room fell quiet except for the sound of the wind outside. For the first time in years, Ethan looked less like the distant, untouchable CEO the world knew, and more like a man who had finally remembered what it meant to feel. "We need to tell Adam," Lily said after a long pause. "He deserves the truth." Ethan nodded, though worry flickered in his eyes. "He is young, but he is perceptive. He already feels connected to you." Lily thought of the way Adam had called her Mommy the first time they met, the strange familiarity in his eyes. Maybe he always knew. she whispered. That afternoon, Ethan asked Mrs. Porter to bring Adam to the garden. The sun was warm, the air fragrant with blooming roses. Lily stood beside Ethan, nervous but resolute. Adam came running across the grass, his laughter carrying through the air. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes bright. "Daddy, Miss Lily," he exclaimed. "Are we playing today?" Ethan smiled, kneeling to his son's level. "Not playing, buddy. We need to tell you something important." Adam's expression grew curious. Lily knelt beside him, her voice gentle. "Do you remember the stories your mummy used to tell you about love always finding its way home?" The boy nodded. "Yes," she said, "love is like a light that never goes out." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She was right. That light led me here to you and your dad. Ethan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Adam, Miss Lily is not just someone who works here. She is family." The boy blinked, trying to understand. "Family?" Lily's voice trembled as she said, "Yes, sweetheart. I am your sister." Adam stared at her for a long moment. Then his small face broke into a smile. "My sister?" He looked between them. "Really?" Ethan nodded, his voice soft. "Really. We did not know until now. But your mummy loved you both very much." Adam's joy was pure and immediate. He threw his arms around Lily, hugging her tightly. "I knew you felt like home," he said against her shoulder. Lily held him close, her tears falling freely. Ethan watched them with pride and gratitude, the ache in his chest easing at last. "Grace would be smiling right now," he said quietly. The wind moved through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of lilies and rain. For the first time in years, the Harrington family stood whole beneath the sun, bound not by wealth or name, but by the unbreakable thread of love that had survived everything. And as Lily looked up at her father and brother, she knew her mother's promise had come true. Love had found its way home. Days passed after the truth came to light, and the Harrington mansion began to feel alive again in ways no one had expected. Laughter returned to its quiet halls, soft music floated through the rooms, and for the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to smile without restraint. Lily moved about freely now, no longer hiding behind the title of Maid. Though the transition was strange for everyone, it felt natural, as if the house itself had been waiting for her return. Adam was the happiest of all. Every morning he would burst into her room before breakfast, dragging her outside to the garden to show her something new. He had discovered a butterfly, a rock shaped like a heart, a flower that reminded him of their mother. Lily never grew tired of his curiosity. The bond between them grew stronger each day, and Ethan watched with quiet pride, still astonished by how love could mend what loss had broken. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, Ethan called Lily to his office. She entered, her heart steady but curious. He was sitting at his desk, not with the authority of a CEO, but with the tenderness of a father, preparing to say something important. "I have been thinking," he began slowly, "about how much I have missed. All the birthdays I was not there for, all the years you grew up wondering where you came from. I cannot change the past, but I want to give you a future that honors what your mother wanted." Lily listened silently, her eyes reflecting the golden light spilling from the window. "You already have, by giving me a family," she said softly. "I never expected more than that." Ethan smiled, his voice gentle but firm. "You deserve everything your mother dreamed for you. Education, stability, choice. You are not meant to live in the shadows of this house anymore. You are a Harrington. It is time the world knows it." The words hit her with both pride and fear. "I do not need the name," she said honestly. "It is enough that you and Adam know who I am." "But I need it," Ethan replied. "For years I failed to protect the people I loved most. I will not fail again." His hand brushed over a folder on the desk. Inside were legal documents, her birth certificate corrected, the adoption papers nullified, her rightful identity restored. Lily's throat tightened. "You did all this?" Ethan nodded. "It is official now. You are my daughter in every way that matters." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me, even when you did not know who I was." Ethan stood and walked around the desk, placing his hand on her shoulder. "Grace believed in you first," he said. "I am only finishing what she started." At that moment, Adam ran into the room holding a piece of paper. "Daddy, Lily, look, I made a family tree." He spread it across the desk proudly. At the top was Grace's name, written in colorful crayon. Below were Ethan's, and then 2 branches leading to Adam and Lily. The drawing was simple but perfect. Lily smiled through her tears and knelt beside her brother. "It is beautiful," she said. "Mommy would love it." Adam beamed. "Now we are all together again." Ethan's eyes glistened as he looked at both his children, his heart full for the first time in years. "Yes," he said softly, "we are." That night, after Adam had gone to bed, Lily stood alone in the garden. The moonlight painted silver across the flowers, the same ones her mother had once planted. She whispered into the cool air, "Mom, I found them. I found home." Somewhere deep inside, she felt an answer not in words but in peace, quiet and eternal. And when she turned back toward the mansion, the lights glowing warmly from its windows, she knew that love, once lost, had been reborn. The Harrington family was whole again. Weeks passed, and peace settled over the Harrington mansion like a long-awaited sunrise. The rooms that once felt cold now carried warmth and laughter, and the silence that had haunted Ethan for years had finally been replaced by the gentle sound of family. Lily adapted quickly to her new life, not as a maid but as a daughter and sister. The transition was surreal at first, yet each morning she woke to the comforting thought that she truly belonged. She spent her days studying in the grand library, helping Adam with his lessons, and walking with Ethan through the gardens her mother had once tended. For Ethan, the changes were profound. He no longer buried himself in work. The office lights that once burned late into the night were now dark by dinner. He made time for family, for simple things like listening to Adam's stories or asking Lily about her plans. One afternoon, as autumn leaves began to scatter across the stone paths, Ethan invited Lily to accompany him to the company headquarters for the first time. The thought made her nervous. "Are you sure?" she asked. "People might not accept this easily." Ethan smiled with quiet pride. "They will. You are my daughter, and I am done hiding from the truth." When they entered the building, whispers rippled through the halls. Employees stopped mid-conversation, astonished to see the stoic CEO walking beside a young woman with the same calm presence as his late wife. In the boardroom, Ethan introduced her to his executive team. "This is Lily Harrington," he said. "My daughter." The room went still. Then, slowly, people stood to greet her, offering handshakes and congratulations. Lily kept her composure, though her heart was racing. For years she had felt invisible. Now she was being seen not for what she did, but for who she was. Later that evening, when they returned home, Adam ran to meet them, waving a paper airplane. "Did you have fun, Lily?" he asked eagerly. She laughed and knelt beside him. "I did, and I missed you." Ethan watched them with a smile. He was counting the minutes until you came back. That night, over dinner, Adam began telling one of his endless stories about school, and Ethan and Lily listened, laughing when his imagination took wild turns. For the first time in so long, the sound of happiness felt normal. After dinner, Ethan called them both to the music room, the same room where Lily had first heard Adam call her Mommy. The piano stood gleaming in the soft light. Ethan rested his hand on the instrument. "Your mother used to play this every evening," he said quietly. "I have not touched it since she passed." He looked at Lily. "Would you like to try?" She hesitated, then sat down. Her fingers brushed the keys gently, uncertain at first, but soon a melody began to form, soft, familiar, full of warmth. Ethan closed his eyes, the sound carrying him back to another time. When she finished, the silence that followed was not empty, but sacred. "That was her song," he whispered. "She used to play it when she was pregnant with you and Adam." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Maybe that is why I remembered it," she said softly. Adam climbed into her lap, resting his head against her shoulder. "Play it again," he said sleepily, and she did. The notes flowed like a lullaby, echoing through the halls, weaving together the past and the present into something whole. Ethan stood beside the piano, his hand resting lightly on his daughter's shoulder. The weight of years had lifted, replaced by something stronger than pain, grace, forgiveness, and love. When the last note faded, Adam was already asleep, his small hand still clutching his sister's. Ethan whispered, "She would be proud of you both." Lily looked up at him, smiling through her tears. "I think she is," she said. The house, once filled with loss, now breathed with peace, and for the first time in a long time, the Harrington family felt complete. Winter arrived quietly, wrapping the Harrington estate in a blanket of soft white snow. The trees stood bare against the pale sky, their branches dusted with frost that sparkled in the morning light. Inside the mansion, the fireplace crackled gently, filling the air with warmth and the faint scent of pinewood. Lily stood near the window, watching the snowflakes drift lazily past the glass. Adam was sitting by the fire, building a small castle out of wooden blocks, his laughter bright and unguarded. Ethan sat across from them, a book in his hand, though his eyes often wandered from the pages to watch his children instead. The peace in the room felt fragile but real, like something sacred that had taken years to find. It had been several months since the truth had been revealed, yet the wonder of it had not faded. Every day still felt like a quiet miracle. Lily had started attending classes again, studying literature at the university nearby. Ethan insisted on driving her himself whenever he could, proud in a way words could not express. Adam often tagged along, demanding that his sister sit beside him in the back seat so he could tell her about his day. They were a family in every sense now, not by title or obligation, but by choice and by heart. That evening, as the snow continued to fall, Ethan called them both to the sitting room. The lights were dim, and the glow from the fire painted everything in gold. "I have something for both of you," he said, standing beside the piano. He handed Adam a small wooden box. Inside was the toy airplane the boy had cherished for so long, now repaired and polished. "You always said you would fly one day," Ethan told him. "This is a promise that when you do, I will be there to see it." Adam grinned and threw his arms around his father. Then Ethan turned to Lily and held out a thin, rectangular case wrapped in dark blue velvet. "This belonged to your mother," he said softly. Lily opened it to find a simple gold bracelet, engraved with the initials GH and a single word, forever. Her breath caught. "She wore this every day," Ethan said. "She said it reminded her that love never ends, even when life changes." Lily clasped the bracelet around her wrist, her fingers trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. "I feel like she is here." Ethan nodded. "She is, in both of you." The room fell silent for a long moment, the only sound the soft pop of the fire. Then Lily moved to the piano, her mother's bracelet glinting in the light. She began to play the same melody that had once lulled her and Adam to sleep as babies. The music was gentle and full, carrying through the halls like a prayer. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. When she finished, Adam clapped his small hands and laughed. "Play it again," he shouted. Lily smiled through her tears and nodded. She played once more, slower this time, savoring each note, each memory. Ethan placed his hand over his heart and whispered, "Grace, we are all right now." The fire burned low, the snow outside falling thicker, muting the world beyond. When the last note faded, Lily looked at her father and brother, and for the first time, there was no ache left inside her, only peace. She had found where she belonged, and so had they. Love, the kind her mother had believed in, had survived everything: time, loss, and even silence. And as the night deepened, the Harrington family sat together by the fire, whole and unbroken, while outside, the snow continued to fall like a blessing upon the world, a heartwarming and cinematic tale that embodies the soul of modern millionaire stories. This emotional journey follows a poor girl who begins as a maid in a wealthy CEO's mansion, unaware that destiny has tied her to the family she serves. Through loss, rediscovery, and forgiveness, she uncovers her true identity and reunites a father and son torn apart by time. Each scene of this moving story radiates hope, humanity, and the power of love that transcends wealth. Perfect for fans of emotional millionaire stories, this narrative captures the beauty of second chances, the tenderness of family, and the healing of broken hearts. As snow falls over the Harrington mansion, love proves stronger than secrets, turning pain into peace and strangers into kin. In the tradition of unforgettable millionaire stories, it reminds us that true riches lie not in power or possessions, but in kindness and belonging. Let this captivating tale of fate and redemption inspire your heart as only the best millionaire stories can. A modern fairy tale of love lost, found, and reborn.